problem. Okay.
Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. Thank you for everyone that is here. Thank you to our guest, Dr. Ralph Ogbolu, for taking out of your busy schedule to join us. Thank you, Kemi Famubode, for offering to share from your experience and specific case. I also want to thank everyone that is joining us. I have my brother here, Dr. Adibwale Mufikoya, who is also a psychiatrist, is joining us. I have Mrs. Awu Fusi here, and a few other people that I'll be mentioning as we go on. So we will just jump right in. By way of introduction, we have two guests in the house, Dr. Ralph Emeka Ogbolu, and I want to read his profile briefly, just very briefly in the time that we have. Dr. Ralph Emeka Ogbolu is a consultant psychiatrist of over a decade, having been with the Department of Psychiatry, LUT, and is a national coordinator of the Suicide Research and Prevention Initiative, SHOPIN, which is the most structured and comprehensive suicide prevention strategy in Nigeria, providing hotlines for suicide crisis situations, among other services. A fellow of the Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria, Faculty of Psychiatry, a certified mediator from the Lagos Multi-Door Courthouse, and an alumnus of the Administrative Staff College of Nigeria, ASCON. Dr. Ralph Ogbolu, we are glad to have you. Good evening, sir. You're welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Okay. We also have with us here a survivor of mental health challenge. Her name is Oluwakemi Famubode. Oluwakemi Famubode, popularly known as DJ Irawo, is an accountant turned entertainer. She is the CEO of Drumline Entertainment, where she carries on business as a drummer, a violinist, a disc jockey, popularly called DJ, a singer, artist, writer, music publisher, and project manager. She's also the CEO of Savvy Gigs, where she trains, coaches, and consults on art, music, business, divorce, mental health, etc. Irawo is divorced and blessed with 3 sons from that marriage. She contemplated suicide twice before marriage and attempted suicide twice during the marriage. She's always willing to share her mental health journey and provide solutions with the hope of healing minds of those going through similar experiences. So for the purpose of our audiences that will be joining us, please, if you can, let your video be off. But please, it's very important that you put off your microphone. Let your microphone be on mute. But if your video can be on, it's fine. It's okay by us. But it's very important that your microphone is off so that we can eliminate background noise. So Dr. Ogbolu, I'll start with you. Can you just tell us briefly what SHOPIN is about? Suicide Research and Prevention Initiative. Just briefly, sir.
All right, it's an organization that started in 2017. And it was as a result of research findings that we were seeing at the time. From the period of 2015 to about 2016, we were seeing on average 1 suicide-related case at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital every month. And this was a cause for concern because we didn't know that it was that, common. And if that was happening in one institution, we just imagined what was happening in the larger society. And so we felt at that time, Nigeria had no structured suicide prevention strategy. And so we decided to set that up. And we started initially as a LUT initiative, but it expanded beyond that. And today we have over 100 members spread across 31 states of the country. Which means that if anyone calls from any of those states, we link the person up with a mental health professional Presently we have psychiatrists, clinical psychologists, medical social workers, occupational therapists, pharmacists, public health physicians, and family physicians. So the essence was we needed to address the issue of suicide in the country and chart a way forward towards advocacy, such as decriminalizing suicide, because in Nigeria, suicide is still a crime. So things like that led us to set up the initiative, and we'll continue to grow. And hopefully we'll be able to cover all 36 states before the end of this year.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Generally, what is the suicide statistics in Nigeria right now? I know you've given us that there is one suicide every month in Lut, but what is the true picture now, especially bearing in mind that COVID-19, which started around January, February, and got serious in March in Nigeria? What is the statistics this year particularly, from your viewpoint of your organization? What's the statistics, suicide statistics right now? Dr. Ogboli?
Okay, I didn't hear the last part of your question, but if you're referring to the suicide statistics, usually we go by the suicide rates. And the most recent is that provided by the WHO, all right, which is 9.5 per 100,000. Now, again, we do know that suicide, unfortunately, is underreported. So there are quite a lot of cases that never get to the hospital or get to the attention of those who will record cases. So we strongly do know that it's higher than that. Now, what we at our organization, what we use is the call rates, okay? And since inception, we have received over 200 calls. And rather than, because it's difficult to specify the exact rate without having a national register, which is one of the things we are hoping to get people to key into. Because sometimes the psychiatrists don't always get to see cases. Sometimes it is the emergency medicine physician. Sometimes it's even the pathologist. Some cases of suicide are only recognized at autopsy. So, but then family members tend to want to not let it be recorded as that because of stigma. So what we usually go by is we have hotlines, and we're more interested in the causes behind the suicide. On average, we get about 4 or 5 such crisis calls every month. Right now, we did notice that when the COVID-19 restriction, lockdown first came into effect, ironically, the calls to our hotlines dropped. However, the moment the first lockdown was lifted, the numbers rose again, calls increased again. And there's several, a number of factors why this may have been. It could be that whilst people were locked down, it appeared that everybody felt they were in the same situation. No one was different from the other. But the moment the lockdown was lifted, calls started coming in again when people had to go and engage, try and earn a living again and things like that. So the rate we still go by is that of the WHO, which is 9.5 for every 100,000 of the population.
Okay, Kemi, I want to go to you now. You can unmute your mic. You've been through a suicide situation. Can you tell us what do you think was how did that play out? What was the cause? How did it start? At what point did you even think of suicide? Did you even contemplate it? How did it start?
Okay, I just want to point out that suicide started before the COVID-19 came about at all. So mine started as a result of like I said in my review, the I had thought of suicide twice before I got married, and then twice during the marriage, or let me say the last one was like after the marriage. But the marriage was obviously over. So the first time I ever thought of it was when I was like, I was 16, during the time that I had to choose my career. I wanted to study theater arts, but my parents did not want me to do that. They wanted me to, do like accounting, this law and all those kind of things. So it really gave me a setback because I knew that I was not made. I mean, I didn't want to do that kind of course. So that was the first time I was like, maybe if I could die, nobody would stress my life, and then being the firstborn was another issue. My parents wanted me to set a good example, lay a good example for my younger ones. So being the firstborn and then having to choose a career, there was so much pressure on me. So that was the first time when I was 16 that I had these thoughts of suicide. So the second one came when I was raped. I was 18 then. So that was the second time that it came about. That was the second time that I ever thought about suicide, but I was just depressed and all that. I thought about it, but I was like, okay, let me move on. I'll just try to forget about what happened. So the third time came during the marriage, probably because of the experiences I'd had, concerning depression during my first and second time. I had postnatal depression. I had postnatal depression during my first, second, and third pregnancies. And then I had one miscarriage as well. So when I lost that pregnancy, I also had postpartum depression too. So the postpartum depression usually came after I gave birth. After I gave birth to the child, like the first time I had it, after my first son, I was thinking that, how am I going to take care of this child? Am I even fit to be a mother? Why did I even bother having a child? Then my body changed. I was fat. I had stretch marks. So those things really affected me. And then during those times, when I had postnatal depression, I found out that I forget things easily, loss of memory. And I'm somebody that has a very sharp brain. I can remember things that happened a long time ago. I remember, as an accountant, I remember figures, I remember things. But during those times, I found out that I don't remember things. I can't remember many things. I have memory loss. I lost of appetite, lots of interest in things that interest me. I love to dance. I love music. I love, arts and things like that. But during those times, I'm just not in the mood for that at all. So the last time was when I was, I knew that I had to leave the marriage. So I was thinking of what my parents would say, what the society would say, what my siblings would say, my friends, everybody, what they would say, how would my decision to get a divorce, how will it affect my children? So those are the things I was thinking about during the second time that I actually contemplated suicide. I was at my worst, as in I didn't know what to do at that time. I'd gotten to the crossroads. It was either I took the decision or I tried to leave. So then another problem that I had now was, okay, if I'm going to do this, carry out this suicide, what method am I going to use? I was actually strategizing. I was like, okay, should I take poison? Should I use knife? Or should I hang myself? What exactly should I do? Because I was alone. I was alone for like 1 month. By that time, my ex-husband had already taken the children away from me. So I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anybody. I was on my own. I was in the house. I was just me. I wasn't eating. I wasn't doing anything. So I was thinking, okay, even when I take poison, okay, what kind of poison should I take? Should it be rat poison? Should I take a sniper? Like that. So in the end, I was like, okay, what if I survive these options? What will happen if I cut myself and I actually survive it? Am I going to be able to drum again or something? Okay, what's the simplest way and the most painless way to carry out this suicide? So I went on a hunger strike. I wasn't eating. I didn't eat I was hungry, but I didn't eat. So I was there until one day my landlady, knocked on my door and just said that she had not seen me for some time. I didn't answer her. She was knocking. I didn't answer her. I didn't plan to answer anybody. So she was just checking my window, checking me, and she saw me lying down on the couch. I was like, I want me to down. I was like, what is the woman looking for? She should just leave me. Let me die peacefully. Like, I already had a premonition that I was going to die on that day because that was my weakest point. I already, started to see spiritual things. That's how she started screaming. She screamed, she shouted, banged on my door, called all the other neighbors. They came to meet me. I crawled. In fact, I couldn't even walk again. I was so sick. I crawled from the couch and went to try to open the door, and that's how my parents were alerted. They took me to the hospital. They said they don't treat that kind of case there. They don't treat psychiatric cases there. So I was I was rushed to Lasut, Lagos State, the psychiatric department. So I was rushed there, and that's how I met a psychiatrist, and then my parents were there. They came later, and I was attended to. But I wasn't getting better in that place, probably because of so many crowds. Many people come to Lagos, the Lasut hospital. So a friend of my family, my parents referred me to the one at Arrow, neuropsychiatric hospital at Arrow. So that's where I went, and I got better. So that's it.
Okay, Kemi, I want to ask you this question, and I'll also throw this question also to Dr. Ogbolu. Do you think society is being fair on mental health patients? It's easy when you have malaria to go to the hospital. The doctor will say, oh, it's mosquitoes. Okay, take this medication. Oh, we'll empathize with you. But mental health cases, people tend to want to put the blame on the patient, and why are you depressed? What is wrong with you? You should not be depressed. You should not be. So, in your opinion, do you think society is being fair on mental health patients?
Society is not being fair on mental health patients at all. In fact, they tell you that you're not being godly enough. You're not spiritual enough. And you're not a born again Christian. They don't judge you. They judge. They don't even know because I don't. Initially, I used to blame people that maybe because they are not really aware of the meaning of mental health. Different cases of suicide came up. I felt that people should have read more about it. There's so many resources online, books, to guide us about this issue, but they don't want to listen. People don't want to read about it. They don't want to judge people that, okay, this is because you are not a Christian, it's because you are not this, you should have been patient enough in your marriage, you should have been this, you should have been that. They just judge you. So the only time that I didn't get judged, that I was able to spill things that from the bottom of my heart was when I consulted a psychiatric doctor. The first doctor that I consulted, and subsequent doctors, I was able to say everything that was on my mind concerning everything that I had. So I didn't have any. So that's just basically it. The judgment comes. So what I just tell people is that they should listen. When people are just talking about what is in their heart, they don't understand how it feels. Though. They just need a listening ear. Somebody to just listen without judging is what a psychiatric patient needs. A depressed person, listening ear is what they need, not judgments. So all this one about you're not a religious, you should pray, and they tell you to pray. Pray about what? Let me tell you, somebody that is depressed cannot pray because the person's mind is not okay. Like I told you, I used to have memory loss. So how will I pray when I don't even remember what am I praying about? When I don't remember what I want to pray about. You understand? So the judgment comes, and it's really, really very sad. And many people have lost their life because of the judgment from their parents, their siblings, their friends. People just want to judge them, and that because they don't get to see people that understand them. They get frustrated, and then they carry out the suicide. So that's it.
Dr. Ogbolu, what is your take? Do you think society is being fair on mental health patients?
Well, society definitely is not fair and has never really been fair to people who have suicide, who have mental health issues. And two things come to mind there, really. It's the issue of stigma, all right? Now, because of the extent of stigma that people have, it affects the person who suffers from a mental health illness in many ways. One, the person doesn't want to seek treatment, okay? And even when the person seeks treatment, the reception is not always the best. I must first of all start by commending her by sharing her experience. And the reason why that's important is people will have jingles, will have campaigns. Attitude is to see people who have experienced it. That's the strong, and that's the one thing that we strongly lack in our society. Most of the other, the developed world, not that there's no stigma, there is still stigma, but you find a lot of people who are able to come out and say that they have been people who have gone through mental health issues. So it makes it not such a big deal, and that makes them a bit more receptive, okay? And so that's one thing we strongly, strongly need to encourage, because once you're able to put a face to it, it drives the point home. And yeah, she said it's unfortunate that despite, all of, you would think that attitude should change. Yes, each time I give a talk or at any workshop, I always ask, and I'm yet to see anyone who does not know someone who has suffered a mental health problem, either a friend, a family member, or who has not themselves. So it is actually common. It's not uncommon, but it's just because of the stigma. And it's good that she mentioned quite a number of interesting things that will help us drive home the point. The first thing is the spirituality about it. Now, we are coming from a point of disadvantage, let me put it that way, in the sense that it is something that is not tangible. If somebody has fever, you feel the person's temperature. If somebody has an injury, you can see it. You can't see a mental health problem. It is the person you see. And that's the first problem we have. So we have to first get people to understand that the person you see is the embodiment of that, but that person is still a person. And so the illness does not define the person. So that's the first challenge. So having known that, okay, we're already working from a point of disadvantage, spirituality then tends to take over, because what we can't see, we tend to spiritualize. And that's why there's a lot of times people who come for treatment will have gone through all forms of spiritual homes, been to herbalists, traditional homes, before they eventually get to the hospital. Because the first thought of people is that this is a spiritual attack. So which is the wrong perception. The other thing she mentioned was because people cannot understand, especially those who suffer from postnatal depression, it's a very big challenge, because even the spouse finds it difficult to understand. And sometimes the person thinks that the lady is just being lazy. She's not able to take care of the child. She's not able to perform her role as a wife. And not because he can't see anything physical, he just feels, and so the lack of support then comes in from the spouse. And that only makes it worse. The other thing is she mentioned miscarriage. Now, again, when people tend to miscarry or have children who are stillborn, we just expect them to carry on, not understanding that in itself is a major life event, that you can't just expect the person to stand up and keep on going. The person needs support. People who have children who are stillborn, they should be able to hold that child. Traditionally, we don't want the woman to see the child. We take the child away from her, which is very wrong. She's unable to mourn that child. Then they go and bury the child without even the woman knowing. Some is encouraged that you should hold that child, even give the child a name. So it helps you to overcome the whole process of mourning. So that's, she suffered, I mean, quite a number of things. Again, our hotlines, some of the number of calls we receive are from students. And what are the things that really the real challenges that students have, either academic challenges or what she has said? They don't want to read the course they're reading, but they were made to read it. And so there's already disinterest, they don't want to. And because you're not interested in the course you're reading, you're not likely to apply yourself to it. And so your grades may be low. And then family thinks and others think that you're a failure. And then you begin to think that you are a failure. And then depression sets in. So, I mean, the nutshell of what she has described is typical of what we see, the cases we see. And we need to understand that, because more than 90% of cases of suicide are people who had depression. So if we can address depression, it will go a long way in helping us to address the issue of suicide. Unfortunately, we all live in a society where most of us have already discriminated against people who are mentally ill. I mean, it's good. When I was growing up, thank God I don't see it anymore. People used to throw stones at people who they considered were, in quote, mad, and make fun of them, and children. Now, what happens is, because you have lived in that society and you've treated somebody who had a mental illness badly, when you now find yourself in that shoe, you self-stigmatize. And that could be one of the biggest problems, because the person will not want to seek treatment. Because you remember how you used to treat people badly who had a mental illness badly, and you expect that people will treat you badly that way. And so you don't even want to identify. You first go into denial. You deny that you even have a problem. And then that already festers the problem. Because just like any medical condition, early treatment is more likely to bring about better resolution. Then she talked about another thing she mentioned, which is very key, is the availability of means. And she's probably alive today because of the lack, to an extent, the lack of availability of means. And that's one of the reasons why we have tried to push as much as possible to make it unavailable for people to easily access sniper, things like sniper. Because if a number of people who survive suicide attempts is likely because they didn't use as lethal a means as others who died by suicide. So the availability of lethal means is a very important aspect in reducing suicide. So she has touched on quite a lot, but the society does not really treat people who have mental illness well. And even in our governmental structure, number one, if you attempt suicide and you are caught, it doesn't make sense, but it's a crime and it attracts 12 months imprisonment. How on earth will you imprison somebody who has depression? What she just described. It's only going to worsen it, but it is the law. And WHO has tried to get countries across the world to try and decriminalize suicide. Because what you're saying is, if you attempt, make sure you succeed. Because if you don't succeed, you have committed a crime and you could go to prison. How does that help anyone? So those are some of the things where I mean, I'm glad things like this, advocacy, will try to drive the point home so that government can get to that point where suicide can be decriminalized. Before I stop, let me just also mention briefly, very importantly, something she mentioned. And this is what we see mostly among adolescents who attempt suicide. And parents need to understand this. And that's the issue of body image problems. Now, the lack of understanding of the process of adolescence itself on the part of the parents can be a major stressor for a child. One, they compare the child. You compare the child with other children, and in comparing the child, you're forgetting that this adolescence is a period where the child is trying to find themselves. They're trying to discover who they are. Their bodies are changing. So by the time you're comparing the child, oh, you look too skinny, or you look too fat, that child, all those things affect the child's own body image perception. And what happens is the person begins to say, I hate myself. I don't like how I look. I'm too fat. I'm too skinny. And it's so common amongst adolescents. She talked about stretch marks. Those are things, because of course, once the depression has already set, it creates a template for you to not see anything good in you. And so hopefully through mass education, but more importantly, what she has just done now is a major tool towards changing people's mindset. When they can hear from someone who has gone through it, it tends to make people understand better and leads to better attitudinal change.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bully, for that. A quick information, two things. If you have any question, please just type your question in the comment section. For the sake of our time and decorum, we will not be able to allow people to speak. But if you have a question, just type it in the comment section and we'll take it as we go along. Then also, in case this meeting goes off, please just reconnect. If it goes off at your end, just reconnect again in a few minutes. Dr. Ogboli, we're still going back to the issue of suicide, but I have a big concern personally, and that's because mental health is not a sickness or a disease that you lie down on the floor unconscious. A man can dress up, wear very nice clothes, has a driver that drives him, and when they get on top of Third Mainland Bridge, will ask the driver to park. The driver will think probably he wants to ease himself or something funny like that, and the person will come down, fully dressed, properly dressed man, and will want to jump off the bridge. Now, doctor, how can we identify when someone is becoming suicidal? Because the reason is that, we have different temperaments. Sanguine, melancholy, phlegmatic, and all that. Some people talk a lot. Some people post things on social media. You know what they are going through. Some people don't post anything on social media. Some people don't even they don't even update their WhatsApp, Facebook in 3 years. So how can you identify someone that is suicidal? For the sake of probably, maybe I have a family member who lives with me, and what should I be watching out for to know that the way I'm seeing this guy is contemplating something?
All right. The first thing is, again, understanding the symptoms of depression, because depression is almost always a precursor to suicide. So let's start from there. Now, in 2017 and 2017, because of the severity of the problem, the World Health Organization, the World Health Day, not World Mental Health Day, the World Health Day, the theme was Depression, Let's Talk. And the reason why the WHO felt that, look, of all the cardiac problems, obstetric problems, problem with children, the most important thing we needed to discuss at that time was depression. And why was that? Because at the time, 322 million people across the world were suffering from depression. At that time in Nigeria, would amount to about just over 7 million people. Now that's a lot. And the reason why it's a lot is what you've said. If somebody has a severe psychotic illness, you may likely pick it because the person may talk totally irrelevantly. The person may be talking to people you can't see, and things like that, things that will prompt people to understand and easily say that something is wrong here and act fast. If somebody has depression, just as you said, it might not show. And so that's why the issue of understanding the symptoms are very important. What are they? Number one, the person feels extremely sad. Now the sadness, is not, we all feel sad from day to day, but sadness that has gone on for at least 2 weeks. And the kind of sadness you feel when you've lost somebody, very, very low. You feel very, very low. The other thing is you lose interest in things you used to enjoy doing. And so that's which she also mentioned. So that's the second one. The other thing is the person has total loss of energy. Now, each one of us should be able to identify these symptoms in anyone we know. And the reason why was that the WHO felt that amongst us, we should be able to spot depression in people close to us. If you see 3 of these, there are other symptoms, but these are the core symptoms. And so once you begin to see any of these, the next thing you should do is ask the person how they are doing. Now, I always tell people it's one thing to say, how are you? And then there's another thing to say, how are you? And actually mean it. It's a common thing to just see somebody and just say that. And the person will, even if the person is sinking in depression, will say, I'm fine. But if you tend to just pause for a minute and actually ask someone how they're doing, the person is likely to actually open up to you. And it's been found that most people who attempt or who die by suicide did not want to die. Now we have to get that very clear. They did not want to die. The problem was they didn't want to continue living the way they were living. So if the way they were living could change, or there was some hope, they would not want to die. So identifying the symptoms of depression. The other thing is hopelessness. If you've now asked the person how they're doing and you inquire, is this person feeling hopeless? Please, that's a warning sign. Anyone who has expressed any form of hopelessness, of course, when one has lost hope, the next thing is, what is the point of living? Ask about if the person is thinking of killing themselves. Before, we thought that if you ask, you might be putting it in the person's mind, but studies have shown that that's not true. Ask the person straight, directly. And we have had people who have done that and were able to nip it in the bud. The other thing is any change in behavior. Any change in behavior. Because of what you've said, some are naturally, chatty people who like to talk. If that person suddenly changes,